I played a lot of Pokemon ROM hacks this year, and in this video, I'll be ranking them. Before that though, some clarifications about the tier list. First, to appear on this list, the hack must have received a major update or release in the last 365 days. So even if I played Pokemon Gaia this year, it wouldn't be fair to include it. Secondly, this will be a mostly opinionated video. There are some that'll still get higher ratings due to their quality level alone, but my overall enjoyment of the hack story, world, graphics, and most importantly, gameplay is still what matters the most. On to the tiers. The double S tier will be reserved for hacks that really blew me away this year. They were extremely hard to put down and were some of the best experiences I've had with the Pokemon IP. In the regular S tier, you'll find hacks I loved playing that are just missing a thing or two, keeping them from the tier above. In the A tier are good hacks I had fun playing, but didn't exactly leave me speechless. The B tier will contain hacks that either felt extremely average or were a mixed bag of enjoyability. The C tier is for those I had a really hard time enjoying, yet still understood how others could. And finally, the D tier will be home to those that offered almost nothing I was able to like. Let's begin with Chaos Purple, an NDS hack that labels itself as a Gen 1 remake, with a difference. Right off the bat, these differences are pretty noticeable, with the opposite gender protagonist as a new rival, additional story events to give the main characters more personality, and heavy modifications to existing areas, taking advantage of Generation 4's semi-3D landscape. To my surprise, it's a very distinct Kanto compared to the ones I've seen in any of the official games, and traveling through the new and updated locations was extremely fun. However, the story is kind of just a worse version of the Fire Red hack Dark Violet, and the gameplay is also very similar to that of the base Kanto games, with just a few tweaks to some enemy teams, making the game slightly more difficult. Other than that, it's just really impressive, and the creator seems to be very active in finishing its development, with progress going up to Cinnabar Island, despite the hack debuting just in May of this year. But 2025 gave us a lot more Johto than Kanto, with the second hack in this video being Crystal Advance Redux. This is very much an enhancement hack, with the focus being improvements to the gameplay rather than the story or region. Although I will quickly add that the season system, alongside following Pokemon and some use of custom graphics, keeps this version of Johto from feeling visually identical to many of the other 3rd gen adaptations of it. More importantly, every Pokemon has been given a revamped learn set, taking inspiration from the later Drayano hacks. You'll also have access to quality of life like the EXP All, as well as a difficulty increase that's very far from unbearable for a casual player. With dozens of improvements and updates throughout the year, I think Crystal Advance Redux easily belongs in the A tier as one of the best ways to play through Johto. Dark Rising Rebirth, the 4th entry to a series many people know for being badly written, poorly balanced, and especially bug-ridden. And while I'll compliment the lack of technical issues in the newest one, it still doesn't really speak to me. The story feels overly edgy with talks of death at pretty much every corner, and the overworld design just feels very bland and lifeless. On the other hand, the actual gameplay wasn't that bad, with a decent amount of Pokemon variety and a mission system that turned each exploration into a gauntlet. Realistically though, it just doesn't make up for the other issues I have with it, and there are dozens of other ROM hacks of similar gameplay quality that don't suffer from the same problems. So as much as it pains me to say it, Dark Rising Rebirth will be going into the D tier. On the topic of gameplay quality though, the next hack is Pokemon Dreamstone Mysteries. Like I said in my top 10 video, I don't think this project does anything super unique or innovative, it's just really fun. The Pokemon variety is really strong, with a few mons even having their evolution levels lowered. You get the EXPL super early, making team building a cakewalk, and you can even modify the in-game battle speed, allowing you to enjoy the music and sounds without suffering through the slow pacing of the 3rd generation. The story is pretty average, though it doesn't spend too much time taking you away from the adventure. Alongside its diverse region to explore, I think Dreamstone Mysteries is a fun and casual friendly ROM hack that easily deserves a spot in the S tier. Up next is Emerald Imperium. This was a pretty popular release this year, but I just didn't enjoy it. Now, I know that's probably not a big surprise to many of my longtime viewers, as I've said in almost every other video that I'm not a fan of enhancement hacks. Outside of that aspect of it though, I feel like Imperium doesn't really bring anything new to the table. In 2025, shoving every Pokemon ever into a barely modified Hoenn region just doesn't sound very enticing to me. Even though the battles were pretty fun and well constructed, I can't say the overall experience felt any better than Radical Red. If you liked it, that's awesome, and I hope you continue to enjoy future hacks like it. For me personally though, it's going to have to go in the C tier. On to Pokemon Evolved, a hack with a pretty interesting gimmick, allowing every member of its Pokemon roster to evolve up to 3 extra times. Now, I kinda hate myself for the opinions I have of this hack, because the sprite work on all 200 plus of these new evolutions is really good, and thanks to the EXP they are pretty easy to obtain. There's just one issue with the hack that really prevented me from enjoying it, and that's the setting being unmodified Kanto. So, like I said, while it does have great sprite work and a good amount of quality of life, I simply can't find myself enjoying playing through the same region for the 100th time, and will have to put it in the C tier. Garbage Gold. As the name kind of suggests, it's a trash log hack, meaning all of your options for team building are pretty terrible. On the contrary, the overworld looks absolutely incredible, with enhanced graphics and elevated areas taking advantage of Generation 4's 3D environment. There's even a new story that features characters from Explorers of Sky, but as much as I enjoyed those two aspects of it, the gameplay didn't really speak to me. And if you feel the same way, I will add that the creator is working on a fully custom region hack called Pokemon Iridium, and will certainly succeed thanks to what they learned while making this one. For Garbage Gold specifically though, I will be putting it in the B tier. Moving on, we have Heart and Soul. Most of you probably already know what this hack is about, due to how much I've talked about it. In case you don't though, it's arguably the most definitive Johto experience possible, allowing players of almost any skill or interest level to find some sort of enjoyment while playing. This is acquired mainly through its insane level of customization, letting you modify almost any system in the game, and a base difficulty level that just makes bosses more of a threat without forcing the player through cycles of trial and error each fight. Alongside some visual enhancements and even the EXP, I think Heart and Soul is an easy S tier. If you still have some doubts after my short explanation, then I highly suggest checking out my full video in the description below. Up next, Pokemon Hearth. This hack really blew me away with its charming artwork, as not only did almost every NPC have a custom mugshot, but even the various shops all had their own unique UIs. Taking place in a brand new region though, you'll have a pool of Pokemon across all 9 generations to capture, and a difficulty level similar to that of the older mainline games. Although at the moment, it is just the 3-gym demo, leaving me without too much to say about it at this time. But I do honestly think it deserves to be an A tier based on its current available gameplay and how well the hack adapts its ancient Japan setting. Not even halfway through, and we've already arrived at the 4th Johto hack in this video. The last 3 have been pretty unique from one another, and Heartgold Generations is no outlier. This hack takes almost every Pokemon to ever exist and scatters them across the Johto and Kanto region. Now, while I did say earlier how I didn't think that concept was very original, this being the first time it's been accomplished in an NDS hack kind of changes my opinion. But also, unlike Imperium and other hacks similar to it, Generations isn't a difficulty hack, with gym leaders only having teams that are just slightly more challenging. It's honestly just really technically impressive and even provides itself as an open source base for anyone who wants to use it for their own ROM hack. Pokemon Lazarus. Before this hack even came out, I kind of had a feeling it was going to be really good. I mean, how couldn't you succeed combining both the charming art style and fun gameplay of Emerald Sea Glass with an entirely new region? but even with my high expectations, I was still blown away. Similarly to Heart and Soul, I believe this hack can be enjoyed by almost any fan of the Pokemon series, and that's something that's accomplished mainly by doing 3 things. First, the variety is extremely plentiful. Every route has a strong amount of Pokemon for you to capture, with a few even having their stats improved to make them a bit more usable. Second, the difficulty. Lazarus has 2 options for the challenge levels of boss battles, and between both of them, I think anyone outside of maybe the top 1% of players will still find some sort of thrill trying to achieve victory. Last but not least, the customization. The PC in the starting town gives you so many different ways to change or improve the gameplay, all of which can be achieved through passwords found in the game's documentation. I don't expect every developer to deliver a hack for everyone, but when they do, it certainly deserves the praise. So Pokemon Lazarus will obviously be going into the double S tier. On to another hack in my top 3 of this year, Super Mariomon. I can't stress enough just how high quality this ROM hack is. There are 151 new Pokemon to capture, all of which are beautifully sprited monsters from the Mario series. They all have really well balanced learn sets and are spread out across the region in a way that always leaves you with more to capture at every new milestone. Speaking of the region, it's entirely inspired by the various worlds of the Mario universe. If things couldn't get any better, the game starts you with a sizable list of customization options, like level caps or optional EV gains. Alongside the EXP Mariomon is an extremely fun ROM hack that definitely belongs in the double S tier. Alright, so considering that I've talked about it in about 7 of my other videos this year, I'm sure just about everyone who's watched my content before probably knows exactly what I think about Pokemon Odyssey. It has about 100 unique regional forms, buffs to every canon Pokemon, basically 2 different worlds to explore, a good story, and dozens of quality of life features. It literally has everything I could ask for in a Pokemon ROM hack, which I really can't say any other has been able to provide for me. I will obviously be putting it at the very top of the list, and I highly encourage anyone who desires a better explanation to watch my full video about it, which I'll link in the description below. Now, originally, Pokemon Pisces wasn't a hack I really enjoyed. On my first playthrough, I felt frustrated with a number of its systems, and eventually decided the hack just wasn't for me. Continuing my second playthrough though, after a number of balance updates, I have to say the game feels a lot better. Taking place in a heavily modified version of Hoenn, Pisces offers an experience like no other. You'll have over 200 new Pokemon to collect, and a mix of old and returning characters to meet on your journey. While I didn't find the story to be that interesting, the Pokédex was extremely good, and the unique visual and balance designs of the new Pokemon have really grown on me since my original playthrough. The game is still pretty challenging, but definitely lacks a lot of the frustration of the original release. Overall, I think Pokemon Pisces deserves to sit in the S tier. It's worth mentioning that despite the huge amount of backlash the developers received from the community on release, they've been working diligently on balance updates, with at least one more big one set to arrive in the future that'll even include full documentation. Moving on, we have Pokemon Recordkeepers. I have to admit, I'm not a big fan of roguelikes, and usually don't spend much time playing through most of the hacks in the genre. Recordkeepers was a little different though, because rather than spending a good portion of your run building a full team, you'll instead just start with a handful of fully evolved Pokemon. But where things get actually interesting is when it comes to the battle system, allowing you to switch Pokemon without using up any turns. Going even further, every enemy defeat gives you a move or ability that you can place on any of your team members, even if they can't learn it in the base games. Not to mention its very pleasing visual design, I think Recordkeepers can sit safely in the A tier. I've spent quite a bit of time talking about my general distaste for enhancement and difficulty hacks, mostly of the 3rd generation games. However, there are a few that I actually enjoy playing, one of which being Royal Sapphire. The main reason I prefer this hack over popularity titans like Radical Red and Emerald Imperium is the changes it makes to the adventure. No longer are you traveling through the same routes and towns you've explored more times than you can remember, as literally every outdoor map in the game has received updated layouts with a sprinkle of new graphics. Royal Sapphire also doesn't overwhelm you with an extreme number of Pokemon and gameplay changes. Battle mechanics still mostly operate as they would in the 3rd generation, without some of the clunkiness and horrible learn sets that plagued those original games. This hack made me realize that I don't hate enhancement hacks, I just prefer when those improvements are actually spread out across the entire game, rather than being dumped almost entirely into the boss battles. Up next is Spirits of the Storm. This hack tells the story about a small town off the coast of the Hoenn region through the perspective of the detective Looker. You'll spend your time solving mysteries regarding Team Aqua and some legendary Pokemon, while also helping the townsfolk who were caught up in the mess. Aside from the unique plot, battles themselves will revolve around a sort of future sight mechanic, allowing you to view your opponent's next action, giving you the advantage over enemies that would likely stomp you otherwise. Due to the hack's few-hour length, I don't have too much else to say, though I think it certainly belongs in the A tier as a short and sweet Pokemon experience. The new Kanto, a fire red hack that seeks to tell a deeper story using the first region. At first glance, I was actually quite interested, because despite its simplistic design, Kanto has a lot of potential for good storytelling. Although, I was not met with that, and instead faced with a story told almost entirely through a black screen and walls of text. The writing itself wasn't horrible, it just wasn't enough to make up for the fact that each time you arrived at a new location, the screen would fade before throwing about 50 lines of dialogue at you. The gameplay doesn't make up for it either, with tons of powerful tools being handed to you early for bosses that, for the most part, weren't much harder than the base games. Honestly, I think I'm more agitated with the many YouTubers that tried to hype this hack up than the project itself. It's clearly a work of an amateur developer that was just given too much spotlight before they had any time to grow and improve. So while I do wish them the best in their future endeavors, I am going to have to put the new Kanto into the D tier. Nearing the end of this list, we have Pokemon Tourmaline. Now, I really wanted to enjoy this hack, and gave it multiple chances this year, each time it received a major update. But even after the 1.0 release, I just couldn't do it. The hack's story and region are pretty good. Nothing special, though I still think they deserve some praise for being somewhat original. The Pokemon variety is pretty mediocre, which led to some boring team building, but the bosses being not very difficult on paper shouldn't have made that too much of a problem. My main concerns are with the grind. The game gives you way less EXP than needed to maintain a full team. Even when trying to brute force the early game with 2 or 3 Pokemon, it still left me struggling against the bosses, which, like I said before, shouldn't have been a problem if I was able to build a full team. My issue wasn't so much that I was under-leveled, rather that training a new Pokemon would take ages. It's still a completed new region ROM hack, so unless what I described bothered you, I can still recommend it. For me personally though, it will have to go into the C tier. Last but not least, Pokemon Valiant. The best way I can describe this hack is good, but very average. You'll play as a brand new Pokemon trainer, traveling across the region to collect 8 gym badges, while putting a stop to an evil team on a quest to control a legendary Pokemon. The variety is pretty much what you'd expect in a game like Emerald, and the difficulty doesn't lean too far away from the mainline games. If I had to make mention of anything that stood out to me, it would have to be the visuals. In some places, they're a bit bland, but for the most part, made the journey a pleasant one alongside your Pokemon following behind you. Overall, I will be putting it into the B tier as a hack that doesn't do anything special, but will still serve you a pleasant experience if you just want a classic Pokemon adventure. But that's just about going to wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed, and be sure to subscribe for more Pokemon fan games and ROM hacks. Thank you to my channel members for their continuous support, and have a nice rest of your day.